My name is Jinhee Ahn Kim. I currently live in London, and I always lose track, but I'm 56 years old now, and I'm a co-founder and CEO of a Esports organization. I was born in the outskirts of Seoul. It was really close to the North Korean border because my father was teaching in the military, and he was teaching martial arts to the military. So I think it was like near Camp Casey. I remember visiting it. I have vivid memories of like the stream that my mom used to hand wash the clothes. I remember playing on the railroad tracks, even though I was like 3 or 4, because we would put our ears down to the tracks, and then you could hear when the trains were coming, and then we would like run away from it and stuff. My father got invited by the University of Cincinnati ROTC program to teach martial arts to them, and so he came out, I think maybe like a year or 2 before we moved. I believe I was about 5 when I moved to Cincinnati. 1969, and so I grew up in the Midwest, kind of on the wrong side of the track at first, and then on the right side of the track, yeah, just pretty much had like a super like Wonder Years kind of upbringing in suburban Ohio. I started off pre-med in college, and then I switched over to economics. And after graduating, I went to work for a management consulting firm and did the business, but was always fascinated in like the artistic side of things. So I went to New York to like talk to people who were doing fashion because that really intrigued me. And while I was just kind of talking to them, like, what's it like to be working in this industry? I got offered a job at one of the big fashion houses, kind of on the business side. And so I was like, okay, so I packed up and moved to New York, and so I started working as a big company called Liz Claiborne back in the 80s. They were kind of like women's like career wear, but the whole time I was working there, I was kind of looking at the designers, talking to the like the pattern makers and stuff, because I really wanted to do that. And so I took some like art classes during the weekend, and I went to Parsons, which is a design school in New York, and had a meeting with the dean, and I was like, I'd really like to apply for your fashion design program. He said, do you have a portfolio? And I like open up this roll of like charcoal drawings from my Saturday class. I'm like, these are my drawings. I think back, I'm like, gosh, what was I thinking? Anyway, he accepted me. And so I started, I did a fashion degree at Parsons, and then actually was designing Ralph Lauren as a menswear designer back in the 80s. But then we ended up, my husband and I, moved to England for some grad school stuff, and then I had my son, then went back to work. Then I had my daughter, and then we moved to Singapore, and then I couldn't work anymore because of the visa thing. And then we moved finally to Hawaii. And then at that time, I was like, gosh, I haven't worked in like 9 years. I only know Barney songs. I'm not sure if my brain is functioning anymore. I think maybe I should try to go back to school to see like if I can actually like, think or whatever. So I applied to law school, and I went to law school. So I was 40 when I think I was probably the oldest student in my class because, everyone was 22. My 2 older kids were in school, and we'd all be doing homework together at the dining table. And then I had this like 3-year-old, and she wanted to like do homework too, right? So, but there was nothing like really appropriate for her. And having lived in Asia, I saw there was really cool stuff for really young kids. So I was like, hey, there's nothing out there. I'm gonna like create it. So started creating this curriculum. I started developing apps, like educational apps for young children, and quit being a lawyer to pursue that. And then my kids started going to the East Coast for school. I was like, that's too far. Let's move to the East Coast. Kind of like overshot the East Coast and ended up in England. And there I started working for like a company that was creating a lot of educational games and stuff for children, so which fit in really nicely with what I had been doing on my own. When we moved to London, we wanted to explore the different neighborhoods, and so my daughters and I went to Notting Hill and got out of the black cab, and just kind of like all these streets and all these stores, and at that time, like Foursquare was really popular. Things like food spotting, where you could kind of see restaurants, and it's like, gosh, I wish I could look at my phone and see what's inside of these stores, so I could figure out which one I wanted to go to. And so I was like, I think I'll develop a knack for that. At that time, it's kind of funny because I came back to Boston for all Asian American reunion at my university. Anyway, I was attending that, and I ran into someone from the business school that kind of wanted to do some entrepreneurship and things. And so I talked to her, and I kind of pitched her this idea. I had this idea for a fashion tech app, location, mobile, all of this. And she was like, yeah, that sounds really intriguing. So we kind of partnered up and created this company, but that was at the same time that I started my job at this London mobile gaming company. So I was like, we got into an accelerator in San Francisco, and so I would talk to my boss. I would spend a week there. Then on Sunday night, I would fly back from San Francisco to London. I would go home, take a shower, and then show up at work at 9 a.m. And then I would do the week for the regular job, working on the, after work and on the weekends on the other startup. And so it was kind of like doing both at the same time. And then
two jobs.
Yeah, and in two different locations. So we had demo day, and we got funded like $1 million and change for our startup. And so at that time, I actually then finally quit the other job. He's like, you can do a part-time. I said, that's not really fair to the new investors. So did that startup for a couple years, and then we sold it and exited. And so after that, that's when, I know I was talking about how I was advising other founders and kind of trying to figure out what next to do, and that's when I came around to finding the Esports organization. So looking back over all my crazy hopping from business to fashion to technology and then now to esports, I think the common thread is I like to enter things that I don't know about, that I find really either it's for me a creative in different ways. Business is creative, fashion design, everyone thinks that is creative, but a lot of it is actually business and organizational. Creative as in pulling all these different parts together and creating a company out of an idea, a product out of an idea, right? And I think what I also find super appealing is if I don't know anything about it, that's why I was saying I got a job at Ralph Lauren as fashion designer. Yes, I had gone to Parsons and learned fashion design, but in this menswear job, it was for doing all their knitwear, sweaters, and that whole aspect of Ralph Lauren. I didn't know how to knit, right? So, but that kind of didn't stop me from going to the interview and somehow getting my boss to go you don't know how to knit, but we'll take a chance on you. So I think throughout all of it, it's always been, I think a lot of people, when they're faced with something that they're unfamiliar with, will be more conservative. And for me, it's I don't know anything, let's jump in. I have a company that does a lot of things within competitive gaming. I think everyone's played some games. I have, I'm not good at it. I'm sure you've played some games, even if it's Candy Crush or something, right? And so we've all, our lives have been touched by gaming. And I kind of saw a parallel to back in the 70s and 80s, you had this whole surf culture. And it kind of captured the youth, and certain brands started popping up that address that like coolness, hipness, and then you had skateboarding culture, and so you had all these brands come out. I think most people didn't really skateboard, but they liked the idea of what that meant. And so for me, I looked at gaming and how it's kind of like looked as like, oh, like Kiki, you're in the basement doing, oh, these are athletes really. I mean, they train like athletes and stuff. But then this whole community and fan base around it, and I was like, I want to help make this like kind of a cool hip thing too. And I wanted to start making fashion like for the gaming audience. So kind of like the content and the gaming, the fashion part I found like super intriguing within like esports in general. So I said to my son, let's do this together. Like I've got like a lot of the startup background and things, and you understand the community, you know, the players, you all this. So we kind of, he was like really skeptical, like, I don't think I want to work with my mom, right? So, but yeah, so we kind of put our talents together and we started this company. We support these players to travel around and compete, and then we do create a lot of interesting content around them, around the competitions. We design clothes for them. So instead of like the traditional, they call them esports jerseys or like soccer jerseys at most teams, where I said, oh, we're not going to do that. I'm going to design like kind of more streetwear type of things for these guys. And so, and women. So I would design a special thing depending on which city they were going to for a special tournament. It's a brand new thing for me. I'm not a competitive gamer, but I think that's what's very rewarding too. I'm constantly learning, but then also being with there with all these very passionate young people, giving them the opportunity to pursue something that they all thought was, whether it was a dream or their parents would say, stop playing video games. Like, I said it to my son too, like, stop playing World of Warcraft and study. Like, you're spending so many hours doing this. But for the players that have just dedicated so much of their time to it, giving them the opportunity to travel around the world. But also, like, there's a lot of creative people that are way into gaming, whether they be writers, videographers, artists, management, and they love this industry so much, but there's not that much opportunity in it right now. I mean, it's growing a lot. And so to give a lot of young people like their first job in this very rapidly growing space, that's been super gratifying. My name is Jinhee Ahn Kim, and this is my Korean American story.